All right. Good morning. My name is Spanberger, and I am proud to represent Virginia's 7th District. I want to thank you all for being here, and I want to especially thank Mr. Mayor Wood from Dumfries. Thank you for joining us. And I want to thank Marty Nohe from Appliance Connection for hosting us today. And I want to thank Bob Swain from the Prince William Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for being a strong advocate for the Prince William County business community. And thank you to the business leaders who have joined us here today to be part of this conversation. We're here this morning because we all share a common goal. We want to keep Virginia strong, and we know that defaulting on our debt does not keep us strong, meaning it is absolutely not an option for the Virginians I serve. In Congress, I have long worked with Virginia's local chambers of commerce on the economic priorities of our region and our Commonwealth as a whole. And on this issue, I've heard directly from Virginia business leaders who are concerned. They're concerned about the economic consequences of a possible default. They're concerned about what that means for Virginia families, employees, and business owners in localities like here in Prince William County. It's senseless that House GOP leadership is playing politics with a potential default, and that's why I'm glad that conversations are happening between the White House and Speaker McCarthy. But they need to move more quickly, because the closer we approach a possible default, the more damage to our local economies here in Virginia we'll see. Prince William County does not need higher interest rates on mortgages. Prince William County does not need to go through a stock market crash, and Prince William County seniors do not need to see their earnings from market-based retirements erased. Most economists agree that a default on our nation's debt would lead to a recession, and unfortunately, we know what previous recessions have meant for Prince William County and localities across Virginia's 7th District. Between 2007 and mid-2008, Prince William County had more than 6,600 foreclosures, which was much higher than other parts of Virginia. And by 2009, foreclosure rates in Prince William County exceeded the average for Northern Virginia and the entire DC metro area. When we're talking about Prince William County's economy, we always need to make sure that we are including federal employees and their families in that conversation. Failure to raise the debt ceiling will not only impact the good standing of the United States of America, but it could also have dire impacts for the more than 172,000 Virginians who work for the federal government and the nearly 130,000 active duty service members who call Virginia home. As the representative for thousands of these families, I am concerned that a default and its ensuing impacts, combined with gridlock and hyperpartisanship on Capitol Hill, could lead to another crippling government shutdown. These shutdowns have historically hurt the finances and job security of families and veterans across the Commonwealth, especially in Northern Virginia. One study found that Virginia was the most economically harmed state back in 2013 during the full federal government shutdown. During that same shutdown, more than 70,000 DoD personnel were furloughed here in Virginia. And a few years later, during the 2018-2019 government shutdown, when I was first sworn into Congress, more than 64,000 federal employees living in Virginia were impacted, and more than $380 million in wages were impacted. There's little doubt that a failure to raise the debt ceiling could have dire impacts for hundreds of thousands of federal employees and their families who call Virginia home, including thousands right here in Prince William County. And should Congress fail to raise the debt ceiling before default, the livelihood of Virginians could be put at risk. There's a chance that the Treasury could no longer be able to raise funds to cover the costs of ongoing projects or the salaries and benefits of these employees. Additionally, not raising the debt ceiling in time could mean that delayed federal benefits for Virginians who have earned them. Social Security benefits might not be able to go to our seniors following a default, which would impact more than 1.5 million Virginians. So it's not just our economy and our local businesses that are in the crosshairs when a default comes barreling around the corner. It's the financial security and the well-being of families, seniors, and veterans who make this community home. We need to be clear. We need to both work together to make sure the debt ceiling is lifted, as both parties have done before. And I also want to take a moment to debunk a myth that has been percolating. Despite what many have heard, lifting the debt limit has nothing to do with future federal spending. I'm deeply concerned about our nation's deficits and agree that we must do more to rein in spending, but a failure to raise the debt ceiling will not result in a lower deficit. A failure to raise the debt ceiling will result in a default and economic catastrophe for Virginians, for people right here in Prince William County, and for small business owners. Raising the debt ceiling is about paying the debts that we have already accrued. And just like Americans must pay their mortgage and their credit card bills, Congress must pay our bills or we will suffer severe economic consequences. Today is not about attacking one side or the other, but it's about reinforcing the need for common sense. And that's why I'm committed to going back to Congress and reinforcing that shutdowns, recessions, and defaults are bad for Virginia families, they're bad for Virginia business, and they are absolutely unacceptable. And now I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce Bob Swain, who serves as the President and CEO of the Prince William Chamber of Commerce, who will share more about why a default would be bad for businesses here in Virginia.
Thank you. My name is Bob Swain. I'm the CEO of the Prince William Chamber of Commerce. I'm here today to thank Representative Spanberger for ringing the bell. Government shutdowns are bad for business. As the largest chamber of commerce in the Commonwealth of Virginia, it's important that we recognize when elected officials are being shining examples of good government. Our very own Representative Spanberger is on the front lines of this national dialogue, trying to inject some reality into this discussion. It's not about politics, it's about people. Government shutdowns occur when Congress fails to pass legislation to fund the federal government. There's no question government shutdowns are costly. When a shutdown happens, programs and government operations are paused, only for them to eventually start up again, and the costs add up quickly. We have a lot of government contractors and small businesses who are our members. When they're awarded government contracts and the government shuts down, it costs their businesses substantial losses. They tell me that stoppages also leave them unsure as they wait and hope that the contracts they are working on come back online. Some do, and some don't, as Congress plays their game of chicken. The situation is even worse for the employees of chamber members. As small businesses, they have limited resources to pay their employees. And if they're unable to recover the lost revenue from the shutdown, their employees must use their vacation time. If the shutdown runs long enough, some staff may have no choice but to go on unpaid leave. And unlike furloughed government employees, who typically receive back pay after the shutdown concludes, these employees won't be getting paid back for the work they were prevented from performing while the government closed. Those employees are just out of luck. Government shutdowns are also overall bad for the economy as a whole. Standard & Poor's estimated that the 2013 shutdown cost $24 billion in lost economic output. Since 2020, the U.S. economy has been experiencing record growth, with unemployment at the lowest point in the last 50 years. It's time for our government to roll up their sleeves and solve this continuous problem. So to conclude, engaging in fiscal politicking is not an effective way of addressing our nation's financial challenges. It simply delays the tough decisions and has real costs for the economy and my neighbors. Thank you. Now, I would like to introduce Marty Nohe, who is on my board of directors, former elected official, owner, and president of the Appliance Connection, which was built 37 years ago. He wants to talk about how a business that has 52 employees is going to be struggling if the government does shut down.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you, Representative Silver, for being here today and for talking about this critical issue. We're ostensibly here today to talk about the need to raise the debt ceiling and allow the federal government to do the business that's already been approved in the budget. As has been said, we're not talking about raising the debt ceiling to do new and different things. We're talking about raising the debt ceiling to implement the federal budget that was already been adopted, signed by the president. But more fundamental to that, what we're talking about is the fate of the U.S. economy and the fate of businesses like mine here at Appliance Connection. You know, we are proud to be a textbook example of a small business. When you hear politicians say they support small businesses, they mean the people like us. As Bob said, we've been family owned for over 37 years. We have deep roots in the community. We support through donations and through in-kind support and leadership roles a number of not-for-profit organizations in the county that serve the people who are most in need. We are what you want a small business to do. Someone that supports the community, the city, the town, the county that surrounds them. But also we have about 50 employees who live either here in this county or in one of the surrounding counties. And all of them live throughout Northern Virginia. And they all rely on a predictable paycheck to meet their family's needs. But our business can only thrive if the economy of the country and the economy of our county is robust and consumer confidence is strong. And that's why on behalf of my company and all of the members of the Prince William Chamber of Commerce, we're calling on Congress to stop playing political games with the budget and end the hyper-partisanship that has led to the possibility of a debt ceiling default. Now, we know both from what economists tell us and from past real-life experience that a government shutdown is disastrous for small businesses, particularly here in Prince William County and greater Northern Virginia. When the government shuts down, we see pundits roll their eyes and proclaim that there's really nothing to worry about, that the government will reopen eventually, and all the furloughed employees will receive back pay for the days of the closure. But the reality is that the impact of these creates ripples that go throughout the region, throughout the country really, and have an immediate impact on the willingness of families to engage in the economy. The uncertainty of when or whether federal employees will see a paycheck again means that people stop buying durable goods like appliances and furniture. They cancel investments like new cars or home improvement projects. They stop eating at restaurants and they stop shopping at grocery stores beyond buying the most basic essentials. And because of that lost business, companies like mine have to wonder whether we can afford to take on new employees or fill vacancies that we may have in our company. We also end up canceling new investments and cut back on our spending internally to the company. And that leads to more cutbacks, and that leads to more uncertainty, and the cycle goes on and on. And even after the shutdown ends, the impacts on not just the federal contractors, but the businesses that support the communities where federal employees live continues to live on. That business never comes back, and it takes sometimes months for us to build operations back to where they were before the shutdown took place. A shutdown like is predicted by many people who are watching Congress right now is an absolute downward spiral and a recipe for a recession, particularly at times like these when both interest rates and energy prices are rising. There's already more uncertainty than the American public can handle, the American businesses want to deal with, and it's terrifying for American families. This is not the time to let partisan games control the destiny of the millions of families and the thousands of businesses that make this country great. Approving and funding a federal budget is at the core of literally everything that the United States Congress does. The inability to pass a budget and make sure that the wheels of the economy keep turning should not be a partisan issue. Thank you again, Representative Spanberger, for the work you're doing to ensure that the debt ceiling is addressed. And thank you for speaking out on behalf of the families and businesses that will be hit hardest if Congress fails to act.
We now have time for some questions.
Congresswoman, I want to ask you about the threat from above. Past week, we've seen 4 objects shot out of the sky. One we're told was from China, 3 we don't know much about. And it's coming at a time when we're hearing more rhetoric about nuclear weapons being used tied to Ukraine and Russia. Can you tell us, from your perspective on House Intelligence, what's going on with these things in the sky? And should residents of the 7th District who are maybe concerned about hoarding food, stockpiling, maybe seeking shelter from something that may come from the sky, what do you tell them?
I tell them that a far greater threat to their security is a potential default of the U.S. economic system. As a member of the House Intelligence Committee, former member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and a former intel officer myself, the administration, the military, our intelligence agencies are doing significant and important due diligence to understand what these items in the sky are. Of course, we know a bit more about what's being called the Chinese Swiveling. And certainly that balloon and components of it that was shot down has been collected and has been moved just locally over to Quantico for research teams to continue to assess the purpose and understand the full details and scope of what that balloon's goal was, or the goal of those who put it up in the sky. And the reality is that as we are continuing to see good work being done by the Department of Defense and by intelligence agencies to understand and hopefully soon make public part by part or bit by bit as appropriate what we know about the other items that have been shot down from the sky. This cannot be something that takes our attention away from what is a greater looming catastrophe, and that is the potential default of the United States economic system and what that would mean for the global economy, what that would mean, you mentioned Ukraine, what that would mean for everything from Ukraine's ability to continue fighting its war to small business owners to be able to keep their lights on.
Have you spoken with your Republican colleagues in the last couple of days, especially since the State of the Union? Has there been any change in tenor, or can you characterize those conversations a little bit?
Related to the debt ceiling
Yes.
negotiations, related to that? Yes, so I have conversations regularly. I am both a member of a bipartisan group called the Problem Solvers Caucus. Our group has been heavily engaged in conversations related to the debt ceiling and avoiding economic crisis, but also really trying to understand and bridge the gap that relates in some of the partisan positioning. And most of us are united. There's a great deal, I'll say there's a great deal of bipartisanship united around the idea that there cannot be a default, and importantly, we can't get anywhere close to a default because the economic impact of even approaching such a time frame at this point, scheduled for approximately June, would be catastrophic. And so much of the conversations that we have been having is how do we move forward with the debt ceiling, or how do we move forward and raise the debt ceiling? There's been much discussion about coupling that with efforts to potentially also address the deficit. My position is one that I have made very clear, and some of my Republican colleagues recognize that they are two separate issues, wholly complementary, but two separate issues. There are many, many ways that we could address our debt deficit issues. There are many, many discussions related to what we spend our money on, how we spend our money, that we can and should be having. But when there is a room full of 435 people that have 435 different ideas of how we should potentially change our spending practices, we at least 218 people to just agree that we shouldn't default while that conversation is happening. And so I think there is a good bipartisan consensus that even for those who might want to have those conversations move forward at the exact same time, that conversations about how to address issues of debt deficit cannot preclude us from addressing the debt ceiling at a time that is reasonable. And notably, since I've been in Congress, we have raised the debt ceiling once, and that was just back in 2021. In the past 4 years, the past 5 years, the debt ceiling now has been raised multiple times. And so this is a practice that many of my colleagues have now engaged in multiple times over without endangering the fiscal security of our nation, and that needs to be actually taken.
Do you have a sense of what Republican leadership wants, or what House leadership wants to see?
I think the challenge is that there are vocal differences that Republican House leadership is hearing. There are many colleagues who want to contend with raising the debt ceiling, get nowhere close to endangering or potentially risking a default. And there are colleagues on the other side of the aisle who say we should just shut down the government. Some colleagues have said they would actively vote to shut down the government as a means by which to bring forth the discussion that they want. So I think House Republican leadership is in a challenging position, that they have many members who want to do the reasonable and responsible thing of governing, that they have some local voices who want to do the opposite. And so it's not an enviable position, but at the end of the day, we were elected to govern. And I think it was Marty who said one of those basic functions of Congress is budgeting and funding the choices that we make. And so we've already agreed to these choices, and they may not like what we agreed to fund, and they may not like the dollars that we agreed to spend. But we made that step forward as a Congress, as a government, in defaulting on that debt. It's not just what we've already agreed to pay for, but our economic prosperity in the future.
What can we do as a chamber, as a governing body, to help lobby to make sure that those votes get moved through quicker to help you out?
I think your presence here today is helpful because so much of what I am doing back on Capitol Hill is talking to colleagues to give the very real stories. I think the example again that Marty gave would be saying you see pundits when there's talk of a shutdown, saying it's fine, federal employees will get paid eventually. And they are not necessarily realizing the fact that there are small business owners that their business is to contract to the federal government. That company never gets paid for work they never performed, and their X number of employees never get paid for the work that they never performed. And those folks don't go out and buy a new appliance, or they don't feel that they can go to a restaurant, or in some cases, they can't actually pay their mortgage or their rent, and in the catastrophic cases, we see that unfold. So the chamber sharing stories, certainly making clear to the entirety of the Virginia delegation, working with the Virginia chamber, so that every single member of Congress who represents the Commonwealth of Virginia understands the catastrophic nature, not just in the 7th, but in all 11 congressional districts that we would face. And so just raising awareness of the issue is incredibly important, and thank you for being part of that today.
All right, thank you, everybody.